In the dusty alleys of General Santos, Philippines, Manny Pacquiao grew up knowing the true meaning of scarcity. His childhood was marked by the daily struggle against hunger, sleeping in makeshift cardboard houses, and waking before sunrise to help his family secure their daily sustenance. The skinny little boy, who barely had enough to eat, found refuge in boxing, a sport that didn't require expensive equipment, only courage and determination that overflowed from his resilient spirit. Among the faces that marked his youth was Bayani Mendoza, a young truck driver who frequently transported goods throughout the southern Philippines. Bayani, a man with an easy smile and generous heart, always stopped his old truck near where Manny trained, offering water and, when he could, some fruit for the young fighter. These small gestures seemed insignificant to many, but to Manny, they represented a mountain of kindness in times when even a complete meal was a luxury. Their conversations were brief but meaningful, with Bayani always encouraging the young boxer to pursue his dreams, even when everything seemed impossible. During the most difficult moments, when Manny considered giving up boxing to work full-time and help his family, it was Bayani's encouraging voice that echoed in his mind, reminding him that his talent was a rare gift that should not be wasted. Time passed, and the roads that united Manny and Bayani began to diverge. The young fighter went to Manila, seeking greater opportunities in boxing, while the truck driver continued his simple life, transporting cargo across the various Philippine islands. Even without direct contact, Bayani always followed the achievements of the young man he had once encouraged through local newspapers, feeling a silent pride with each victory. In those early days, neither could have imagined how their paths would cross again decades later, in circumstances completely different from those that marked their friendship. Life, with its characteristic unpredictability, was preparing the stage for a reunion that would reveal how small acts of kindness can echo through time, returning in unexpected and transformative ways. The following years witnessed Manny Pacquiao's meteoric rise in the boxing world. His hands, once used to carry sacks of rice in the markets, now conquered belts and worldwide acclaim. Each fight won was not just a personal victory, but a symbol of hope for millions of Filipinos who saw in Manny living proof that determination could overcome poverty. His victories in American rings transformed him into a global celebrity, but his heart remained firmly rooted in the same dusty streets where he grew up. While Manny ascended to global fame, Bayani's life followed a more turbulent path. His old truck, which for years had been his livelihood, began to show signs of irreversible wear. The mountainous roads of the Philippines took their toll on parts that Bayani could no longer replace. With fewer and fewer freight jobs, his financial situation gradually deteriorated, transforming the old dream of prosperity into a daily struggle for survival. Bayani's wife, Ligaya, faced health problems that required expensive medications, forcing him to choose between keeping the truck running or ensuring her treatment. With no viable alternatives, the truck driver found himself forced to accept increasingly risky jobs, transporting loads too heavy for his worn-out vehicle on dangerous routes that other drivers avoided. With each trip, the fear of a fatal accident became more real, but necessity spoke louder than common sense. On a rainy night in the mountains of Luzon, the inevitable happened. The truck's brakes failed on a steep descent, resulting in a devastating accident that completely destroyed the vehicle. Miraculously, Bayani survived, but with injuries that would leave him temporarily unable to work. Without adequate insurance, and with accumulated debts for his wife's medical treatments, the man who had once extended his hand to a young boxer now found himself completely helpless. Lying on an improvised bed in his humble residence on the outskirts of Manila, Bayani watched the news exalting the achievements of Manny Pacquiao, now not just a legendary boxer, but also an influential senator in the Philippines. While smiling with pride at seeing the success of the boy he had known, Bayani would never consider asking for help or reminding Manny of the small acts of kindness from the past. For him, the true value of those actions lay in having been offered, without expectation of return. On a stuffy March afternoon, Manny Pacquiao was participating in a charity event in a poor neighborhood of Manila. After years of success, the boxer had never forgotten his origins. dedicating a significant part of his time and resources to social projects in needy communities. Surrounded by security guards and advisors, Manny walked among the crowd, distributing food baskets and school supplies to families in need. His eyes, trained to identify punches in the ring, now sought faces that reflected the same struggle he had once faced. Among the hundreds of people who gathered to see the national idol, a familiar face caught Manny's attention. A middle-aged man, visibly debilitated, leaned on an improvised cane while patiently waiting in line. There was something in that gaze that transported the boxer back to his youth days in General Santos. Approaching cautiously, Manny felt his heart race as he recognized Bayani, the truck driver who had so often helped him when no one else believed in his potential. Time had not been kind to Bayani. His features, once marked by a constant smile, now carried the weight of years of hardship. His calloused hands trembled slightly, and his thin body evidenced the scarcity that accompanied his current life. Manny noticed the worn clothes and patched shoes, unmistakable signs of an extremely precarious financial situation. For a moment, the boxer felt a lump in his throat as he realized how drastically different paths their lives had taken. Containing the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him, Manny approached Bayani, who initially did not recognize the famous boxer. When understanding finally dawned on the truck driver, his eyes widened in a mixture of surprise and embarrassment. Bayani tried to straighten his posture, hide the evidence of his poverty, preserving the pride that had always characterized his personality. Even in his current condition, the man maintained the dignity that Manny had so admired in the past. The reunion, although brief amid the bustle of the event, deeply marked both men. Manny, using his influence, managed a private moment with Bayani, away from curious onlookers and intrusive cameras. There, without the pressure of the crowd, the truck driver finally allowed himself to share fragments of his recent history: the accident, the loss of his truck, the financial difficulties, and his wife's failing health. Each word was spoken without self-pity, merely as an observation of a reality that thousands of Filipinos faced daily. After the reunion with Bayani, Manny couldn't get the image of his friend in such precarious conditions out of his mind. Lying in his luxurious bed, the contrast between his current life and that of the truck driver seemed almost unfair, considering the kindness that Bayani had always shown. Without fanfare, Manny instructed Eduardo Villanueva, his most trusted personal assistant, to thoroughly investigate the situation of his old benefactor, recommending maximum discretion to prevent Bayani from discovering and feeling humiliated. Eduardo dove into the mission with the same efficiency he applied to all matters related to the boxer. Driving a simple car to avoid drawing attention, the assistant visited the neighborhood where Bayani lived, a simple community on the outskirts of Manila where unfinished concrete houses lined narrow, poorly paved streets. The residence of the truck driver, a man who now approached 67 years of age, stood out for its modesty even in that environment of scarcity, with peeling walls and a roof that clearly let water in during the heavy Philippine rains. Discreetly conversing with neighbors and local merchants, Eduardo discovered details that Bayani, out of pride, had omitted during the brief meeting with Manny. The accident that had destroyed his truck had left permanent physical sequelae, including chronic pain that severely limited his ability to work. Ligaya, his wife, suffered from a heart condition that required expensive medications, often unavailable in the saturated public hospitals of the city. His two children had abandoned their studies to work, trying to supplement the insufficient family income. The situation was even more serious than it initially appeared. Eduardo discovered that Bayani had mortgaged his small house to try to buy a used truck, a deal that ended up being fraudulent, leaving him without the vehicle and with substantial debt. With payment deadlines overdue for months, the bank threatened to take the property, which would leave the family literally on the street. In conversations with former truck driver colleagues, Eduardo confirmed Bayani's impeccable reputation in the sector, known for his unwavering honesty and willingness to help other drivers in difficulty on the roads. Upon returning to Manny with a complete report, Eduardo noticed something rare on the boxer's face: silent tears that he didn't bother to hide. Bayani's story represented everything that Manny most feared in his own youth. working tirelessly for decades, only to end up with nothing, a victim of circumstances beyond control. That night, alone in his office, the world champion and senator made a decision that would change not only Bayani's life, but also reaffirm his own deepest values. In the following weeks, Manny carefully crafted his plan to help Bayani, always prioritizing preserving the dignity of his elderly friend. Instead of simply offering money, which could be perceived as humiliating charity, the boxer wanted to provide a true second chance, an opportunity for a new beginning that would restore Bayani's means of subsistence and, more importantly, his pride. To this end, Manny contacted the largest truck dealership in Manila, requesting the most modern, safe and economical model available in the Philippine market, with specifications to meet the needs of a senior driver with physical limitations. While the vehicle was being prepared with special modifications to accommodate Bayani's physical limitations, after the accident, Manny personally dealt with resolving the mortgage issue. Using his contacts in the banking sector, he managed not only to settle the outstanding debt, but also to renegotiate the terms so that the house would definitively remain in the family's name, protecting them from future financial problems. All this was done through intermediaries, without Manny's name appearing on any official document. Simultaneously, the boxer mobilized his own medical team to assess Ligaya's condition. After discreet consultations conducted as part of a supposed government health program, a small white lie that Manny considered necessary, the doctors recommended a more effective treatment that, although expensive, could significantly improve the quality of life of Bayani's wife. Without hesitation, Manny funded the entire treatment, including imported medications that rarely reached Filipino public hospitals. To ensure that Bayani would have work as soon as he received the new truck, Manny contacted logistics companies with which he maintained business relationships through his multiple enterprises. Using his influence, but without revealing his true motives, he managed to secure stable transport contracts that would guarantee a consistent and secure income for at least 2 years, sufficient time for the truck driver to rebuild his reputation in the market and win new clients on his own merit. The most delicate part of the plan was how to present all this help without hurting Bayani's pride or making him feel like an object of pity. After much reflection, Manny decided that the truth, presented in the right way, would be the best path. He wanted Bayani to understand that this was not charity, but repayment for everything the truck driver had done for him when no one else believed in his potential, an investment in someone who deserved a second chance just as Manny himself had had his. On a sunny Sunday morning, Manny drove to Bayani's house, reducing his usual entourage to just one discreet security guard who followed at a distance, a necessary concession that his advisors demanded for security reasons. Dressed in simple clothes to avoid drawing attention, the boxer arrived in a modest car, parking a few meters from the truck driver's residence. His heart was racing, not from the adrenaline of the rings he was accustomed to, but from apprehension about how his gesture would be received. With determined steps, he approached the modest door and knocked gently, while his security guard remained in the car, respecting the privacy of the moment. The surprise on Bayani's face upon opening the door and finding the famous boxer was instantaneous. Confused by the unexpected visit, the truck driver hurried to invite Manny in, visibly embarrassed by the simplicity of his house. Ligaya, equally surprised, quickly tried to organize the small living room, offering the best available seat to the illustrious visitor. The environment, although simple, was clean and organized, reflecting the pride and dignity that the family maintained despite their financial difficulties. With carefully chosen words, Manny began to explain the reason for his visit, recalling the times when Bayani helped him with small gestures that, for a hungry and determined young man, meant the world. The boxer described how those moments of kindness had shaped his character, teaching him about generosity and humility, even when he achieved worldwide stardom. As he spoke, Manny observed the emotions passing across Bayani's face, surprise, nostalgia, and a growing understanding of where the conversation was heading. When the moment finally came to reveal his plan, Manny asked Bayani to accompany him to the street. There, parked a few meters away, was a new truck, gleaming under the Philippine sun, much larger and more modern than any vehicle the truck driver had ever owned. Bayani's expression completely transformed, oscillating between disbelief and confusion. His trembling hands touched the shiny bodywork, as if to verify it was real, while his tear-filled eyes reflected the metallic blue of the spacious cabin adapted to his specific needs. Bayani's initial reaction was exactly what Manny feared: a polite refusal, based on the pride of a man who had always solved his problems alone. With patience and empathy, the boxer explained that this was not charity, but an investment in someone who had invested in him when no one else would. Manny detailed how the already secured contracts would generate enough profit for the truck to pay for itself in a few years, transforming the gift into a mutually beneficial business. Each argument was carefully constructed to preserve Bayani's dignity, allowing him to accept the help without feeling that he was compromising his principles. After hours of frank conversation, Bayani finally accepted Manny's gift, understanding that refusing it would be denying the boxer the same opportunity for generosity that he himself had demonstrated decades ago. The keys to the truck passed from the hands of the world champion to those of the truck driver in a simple gesture, but one loaded with meaning. That moment marked not just the transfer of a material possession, but the beginning of a new phase in the life of Bayani and his family, a second chance that few have the privilege to receive. The following days were ones of intense adaptation for Bayani. The new truck, equipped with modern technology he had never operated before, required a period of learning. Manny, anticipating this, had provided an experienced instructor who patiently taught the truck driver all the details of the vehicle, from the GPS navigation system to the specially adapted controls to compensate for his physical limitations. The new truck had been carefully adapted to compensate for Bayani's physical limitations and his advanced age. The high-sensitivity hydraulic steering significantly reduced the effort needed to maneuver the vehicle, while the assisted braking system with anti-lock technology ensured safety even with the reduced strength in the elderly truck driver's legs. The ergonomic cabin included a special seat with lumbar support that relieved the chronic pain in his back, and the easy-to-read digital dashboard compensated for his eyesight that was no longer as sharp at 67 years of age. Rear cameras and blind spot sensors eliminated the need for sudden neck movements, allowing Bayani to operate the vehicle safely and comfortably despite the after-effects of the accident. The first transport contract was successfully completed a week later, resulting in a payment that surpassed everything Bayani had earned in the last few months of temporary work. Seeing his bank account with a positive balance after so long with constant debts brought tears to the truck driver's eyes. That night, for the first time in years, the family dined without the shadow of financial worry hovering over the table. Ligaya, benefiting from adequate medical treatment, showed visible signs of improvement, actively participating in the celebration with an energy she hadn't shown in a long time. Bayani's children, inspired by the transformation in family life, made important decisions. The eldest, Danilo, who had abandoned school to work as a mason's assistant, decided to resume his evening studies while continuing to contribute to the family income on a reduced schedule. The youngest daughter, Maricel, who dreamed of becoming a nurse but had given up due to lack of resources, re-enrolled in nursing technical school, with Bayani now able to pay her tuition. Hope, that feeling that seemed to have definitely abandoned, the family's home now returned with renewed strength. 6 months after receiving the truck, Bayani's life was completely transformed. His transport company, now formally registered as Kamay na Tulong, Helping Hands in Tagalog, was consistently expanding, allowing him to hire 2 additional drivers, both veterans of the sector, who had lost their jobs due to increasing automation in Manila's ports. The truck driver, who had once struggled to secure a single freight job, now coordinated a small fleet, becoming a respected employer, known for his fair practices and genuine concern for the well-being of his employees. Manny Pacquiao monitored Bayani's progress from a distance, receiving discreet reports from Eduardo about the truck driver's advances. The boxer deliberately kept his distance, allowing his friend to build his new path without the shadow of his fame interfering. This approach demonstrated a deep understanding of what Bayani valued most: the opportunity to achieve his success on his own merit, using the help received as a starting point, not as a permanent crutch. On an unexpected afternoon, Manny received a small package in his office sent by Bayani. Inside, he found an artisanal miniature truck, carefully carved, from Camagong wood, one of the most noble woods of the Philippines. With the gift, a simple letter expressed gratitude without sentimental excess, written with the same direct honesty that had always characterized the truck driver. The last lines, however, contained an invitation for a family lunch at Bayani's house, now renovated with the fruits of his own work, not as a demonstration of wealth, but as a symbol of recovery and restored dignity. The reunion between the two friends, this time in circumstances of equality, not financial, but of dignity and purpose, definitively sealed the cycle that had begun decades ago in the dusty streets of General Santos. Seated on the modest but comfortable veranda of Bayani's house, the two men shared stories and reflections on how small gestures can trigger profound transformations. Manny's presence, without advisors or security guards, conveyed a clear message. That visit was not from the famous boxer or the influential senator, but simply from the friend who valued human connection above titles or positions. As he said goodbye, Manny reflected on how his own journey had been shaped by countless Bayanis along the way, people who offered small gestures of kindness without expecting recognition or retribution. The true impact of his help to the truck driver was not just in the material transformation of a family's life, but in the perpetuation of a philosophy of generosity that now expanded through Bayani's actions toward other truck drivers in need. The virtuous circle continued, demonstrating that true wealth is not measured by what one possesses, but by the positive impact one has on the lives of others. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel.